Part 1. The Promised Land. The onset of the year 1823 was marked by a turbulent beginning, as a fierce storm relentlessly pounded the eastern shores of Britain for 2 weeks. Scotland bore the brunt of this tempest, enduring relentless gales and heavy snowfall that confined residents to their houses, halted mail services, and rendered coach travel perilous. The maritime conditions were particularly hazardous during this tumultuous period. The American vessel Elizabeth, originating from Boston and seeking refuge along the Scottish coast, tragically sank with its entire crew, whereas only one survivor was found ashore after the Russian ship Aeolus succumbed to the sea. In a similar plight, the nearby local packet boat, named Betsy Crook, nearly reached the Firth of Forth but was ultimately swept onto rocks and destroyed near the entrance to Crail Harbour, below Fife Ness. Amid the relatively tranquil surroundings of Leithport, situated a mile from Edinburgh on the Firth, Henry Crouch vigilantly monitored the weather conditions. As the captain of the Kennersley Castle, an armed merchant vessel scheduled to set sail on January 14th, carrying nearly 200 passengers and a year's worth of supplies bound for a new South American colony, Crouch observed with concern. With only a week remaining before the departure, the timely completion of the ship's loading appeared improbable, unless the raging storm abated. Unfortunately, the weather escalated. January 14th marked the precise day when the tempest unleashed its full fury upon Edinburgh. Virtually all movement in and out of the city ceased. The roads became impassable amidst the swirling snow. The emigrants who had secured passage on the Kennersley Castle ship, housed in the inns and boarding houses of Leith, experienced a period of frustration. Initially arriving at the port filled with excitement, eagerly anticipating the start of new lives, brimming with prospects and, in their belief, prosperity. Their journey was not one of fleeing from destitution, evading exploitative landlords, or escaping the hardships accompanying the economic turmoil of the Industrial Revolution. Instead, it was a deliberate, meticulously planned choice driven by the aspiration to enhance their lives, elevate their standard of living, and become trailblazers in a land that promised great rewards for their bravery and enterprise. Within the group, there existed a number of professional men, doctors, lawyers, and even a banker who had been encouraged to envision themselves as the future elite in the upcoming colony. Additionally, there were farmers, some of whom were in their later stages of middle age. They had either sold their lands or relinquished long-standing leases, utilising their savings to purchase approximately 100 acres of the incredibly fertile soil, which, by all indications, might harbour valuable gold or mineral reserves. Alongside these were shopkeepers, enticed by the prospect of cultivating an entirely new market, and artisans, attracted by wages surpassing what they could expect to earn in Scotland. Clerks had been enticed away from their desks by the promise of positions within the civil service of their new nation, while a young man inclined towards the arts eagerly anticipated assuming the role of a theatre manager. No surprise that, like Captain Crouch, these enthusiastic emigrants felt frustrated by the storm-induced hold-up, while women endeavoured to entertain restless children indoors, and men observed the blizzard through the murky windows of dim alehouses. Their thoughts wandered to the life awaiting them in the sunny, mild climate of their prospective South American residence. They had been assured that it was one of the most healthful and picturesque locales globally, where Europeans are spared from the perils of ailments prevalent in the West Indies and lived to a ripe old age. Indeed, the settlers had been furnished with a lot of information regarding the country they were about to embrace, to the extent it almost already felt like their home. Eagerly anticipating the sights depicted in promotional leaflets, newspaper articles, ads, street ballads, and a comprehensive 350-page guidebook primarily designed for settlers' use, their anticipation surged. Their confidence was strengthened yet by the Scottish representatives of a land which, according to a senior British naval officer who had spent much time in the region, is excelled by no country under the influence of British dominion. This land was known as the territory of Poyais, and was labelled an earthly utopia. It was depicted as an autonomous and liberated region, nestled among the hilly shores of the Bay of Honduras, a few days' voyage from Jamaica, a day and a half from the British settlement of Belize in Yucatan, and approximately a week from New Orleans in the United States of America. Situated amidst the Spanish South American provinces of Honduras and Nicaragua, it was set apart by a range of nearly impassable mountains. Due to its natural defences, Poyais remained free from Spanish control. Since being discovered by West Indies pirates in the late 17th century, British settlers had intermittently inhabited the land. Despite strong connections between Poyais' indigenous leaders and the British West Indies, the territory was never officially declared a British colony for political reasons. And despite several attempts by Poyaisian kings to align their nation with the empire through appeals to the government in London, it remained unclaimed. Consequently, the vast natural wealth of Poyais, its incredibly fertile land, dense forests, gold reserves, and abundant marine life remained mostly untouched. A great comfort for those awaiting their journey lay in the fact that their new homeland was under the governance of a respected fellow countryman, a distinguished Scotsman appointed by the Poyais king. Some among them had personally encountered this man, General Sir Gregor MacGregor, a seasoned veteran of the Napoleonic Wars and a revered figure in South America's struggle for independence from Spain. Subsequently, he was honoured with the title of His Highness Gregor, Cazique of Poyais. Cazique meaning prince, derived from the Spanish-American term for a native chief. His Highness had travelled to the United Kingdom with a specific aim: to recruit officials for his administration and encourage immigration by individuals possessing a sense of adventure and the expertise to exploit the riches of his territory, and the fostering of the European values admired by the natives. During a meeting with the Leith party at his accommodations in Edinburgh, he assured them that they wouldn't be the first to arrive on those new shores, as a contingent of 70 settlers had already reached Poyais to begin the nation's development. As the relentless storm persisted, those intending to embark on the Kennersley Castle faced prolonged waiting. The ship's hold was stocked with a year's worth of provisions: beef, pork, flour, rice, oatmeal, pot barley and other essentials, alongside English horsehair mattresses, blankets, pillows and an array of tools for building and farming. However, due to worsening weather conditions, the emigrants experienced further delays. It wasn't until Wednesday the 22nd of January that they could finally bid tearful goodbyes to the crowd of relatives and friends on the dock before boarding boats to reach the anchored ship in Leith Roads. His Highness the Cazique personally visited the ship to offer well wishes and ensure their comfort. He surprised many by declaring free passage for all women and children on the groundbreaking voyage from Scotland to Poyais. As MacGregor departed for shore, the colonists erupt into spontaneous cheers. In a show of respect, Captain Crouch fired a salute of 6 guns and raised the flag of Poyais, a green cross of St. George on a white background. Finally, their journey commenced under favourable winds and clear skies, encountering only a substantial swell as their main concern. Within 2 days of sailing, the ship navigated around Duncansby Head, near John O'Groats, entering the tight passage known as the Pentland Firth, separating the Orkney Islands from the Scottish mainland. Continuing for 2 more days, the vessel passed Cape Wrath and the Butt of Lewis, tracing the northwestern coastline of the Outer Hebrides. By January 27th, the passengers observed the distant fading silhouette of St Kilda as the ship sailed further into the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. Captain Henry Crouch had eagerly awaited the arrival of a pilot cutter from the Black River port, but to no avail. The day after the Kennersley Castle reached the shores of Poyais, the captain had sent a boat to gauge the harbour's depth. However, the crew returned with puzzling news. There were no ships or even small boats docked, an unusual sight for the main port of the region. Surprisingly, there was no sign of life ashore, contrary to the settlement depicted in the guidebook's engraving. The actual lagoon differed significantly from the artwork, possibly concealing the town behind a low bluff near the river's mouth. Despite scanning the shoreline with his telescope as they navigated into the lagoon, Captain Crouch couldn't spot any buildings or signs of habitation. Eventually, he decided to drop anchor for the night, promising the restless passengers a shore trip in the morning to locate the town and unload supplies. However, he couldn't shake off the oddity that no one on land seemed to have noticed the visible Kennersley Castle approaching from afar, especially in such clear weather. The ship bustled with activity in the early hours of Saturday, March 22nd. Following breakfast, women and children gathered at the rails to observe. The first group of men, destined to step foot on Poyais soil, descended via rope ladders into boats. These boats then glided across the peaceful lagoon towards the two strips of land constituting the river's bar. Amidst the rising anticipation, a sense of uncertain apprehension lingered among those left on board, eagerly awaiting news from the exploratory party about the increasingly mysterious shore. However, nothing could have prepared them for the reports that came back. For the first group that arrived ashore, the disappointment was palpable. Their boats were being rowed back to shore to collect more men as they stood beside an unwelcoming swamp in disbelief. Their surroundings were desolate. The welcome they'd hoped for had not arrived in this new land. However, an apparent twist of fate arrived in the nick of time, as they could make out human figures on the far side of the water that separated them from the river mouth. These mysterious strangers began waving. They did not appear to be natives, rather they wore European clothing. A laughter of relief surged through the landing party as they embraced each other in celebration. These people must have come from the town, which must be further away than expected, further up the river, surely. The group eagerly ventured around the edge of the lagoon to meet their new apparent fellow colonists. It seemed like there was no town at the Black River, as had been claimed. Those mysterious people ashore were only those from a previous ship called the Honduras Packet that had arrived the prior September. Their settlement was merely a group of tents and bamboo huts they had built. They explained that their circumstances were much alike the Kennersley Castle. They had anchored by the lagoon. Their captain had even fired a cannon to attract the authorities of the supposed nearby town. They received no response. Assuming they'd arrived at the wrong location, they checked and rechecked the map they'd been given, coming to the conclusion that they were in fact exactly where they needed to be. They guessed the town was westwards, up the river. So they disembarked in search of it, but found no trace of habitation whatsoever. After hours hacking through the dense jungle, they found not a single building, road or track. Lieutenant Colonel Hector Hall insisted they make the best of their situation and hold out hope of finding the Poyaisian authorities, but nothing came of it. They only encountered some natives, some amenable, others not so much. Two mysterious Americans had made their homes on higher ground upriver. The natives had led them to what they believed to be a settlement, but it was just a crumbling old fort with some wooden hut foundations, effectively a long-abandoned settlement. These people, the Poyais, exhibited the traits of modesty, docility, and friendliness, coupled with quick-wittedness and a strong keenness to learn. A significant number among them could converse in at least some English, as a long-standing tradition instilled in them held that the grey-eyed people, referring to the English, were designated to safeguard them from oppression and bondage. There was compelling evidence to suggest that the Poyais, in an earlier era, had more familiarity with various aspects of civilization, given that their customs and the antiquities discovered in their land hinted at a possible lineage tracing back to the advanced Aztec civilization of Mexico. A once sophisticated society had faced destruction at the hands of the ruthless Spanish invaders. The settlers' disappointment soon turned to anger. The contract with Captain Crouch had only been for a one-way passage. Returning was expensive, and to go back to Scotland would be dearly embarrassing, requiring them to rebuild their lives from nothing. These hardy Scots were stubborn and wanted to claim this land that they had paid good money for. The group resolved to stay and tried to make the most of the situation. After 4 months, the settlers had made little attempt to provide themselves with good shelter. Instead, they dwelled in tents or at most bamboo huts. 2 of the settlers wanted to do better and sought to collect timber and find pieces of land ideal for clearance to construct improved shelter. Yet this sense of motivation did not extend to everyone. Some refused to pitch in, others grumbled at the mistakes made by others in bringing supplies safely ashore. Despite the cynicism, it was very much the case that their surroundings were teeming with wildlife to be hunted, and the sea and river were full of fish. Exotic fruits were plentiful, plantains, bananas, and vegetables were abundant. The mixed feelings persisted though. Some settlers, especially the elderly, could not come to terms with the challenges that lay ahead and the physically demanding need to build a settlement from the ground up. Further attempts were made to construct a more substantial settlement before the rainy season was to arrive in only a few weeks, but to little avail. It seemed to be the will of Providence, James Hastie reflected later in his first-hand account, that every circumstance should combine for our destruction. Diseases such as malaria and yellow fever broke out due to the drinking of brackish water. Men who were already demoralised rapidly sank into utter despair through sickness. In May 1823, the Mosquito King, George Friedrich Augustus, was brought before the group of settlers. He explained to them that he had never granted MacGregor the title of Cazique, nor given him the right to sell land or raise loans against it. The emigrants were in fact in his territory illegally, and would have to leave unless they pledged their allegiance to him. Most of the settlers chose to then leave aboard the cramped schooner Mexican Eagle, which set sail to the British colony of Belize. Disease spread rapidly among the settlers and most of them died, many needing to be carried from the ship into the British colony upon arrival. The colony's superintendent, Major General Edward Codd, opened an official investigation to lay open the true situation of the imaginary state of Poyais and the unfortunate emigrants. He sent word to Britain of the Poyais settlers' fate. By the time the warning reached London, MacGregor had 5 more emigrant ships on the way. The Royal Navy intercepted them. A third vessel, Scheme, carrying 105 more Scottish emigrants, arrived at the Black River, but on seeing the abandoned colony, the master Captain John Wilson sailed on to Belize and disembarked his passengers there. The fourth and last ship to arrive was Albion, which arrived at Belize in November of 1823, but which was carrying provisions, arms and stores, and not passengers. The cargo was sold locally at auction. The surviving colonists variously settled in the United States, remained in British Honduras, or sailed home aboard the Ocean, a British vessel that left Belize on the 1st of August 1823. Some died during the journey back across the Atlantic. Of the roughly 250 who had sailed on Honduras Packet and Kennersley Castle, at least 180 had perished. Fewer than 50 ever returned to Britain.